Hi everyone, my name is Brennan Marr. That noise you're hearing is my ventilator. Welcome to One with the Force, presented by Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. I linked my podcast to YouTube for the first time yesterday. So if you're joining me for the first time on YouTube, welcome. So I wanted to talk about one line of dialogue from the original Star Wars film that I think is going to have some important meaning in the Acolyte series, I think. And that would be, your eyes can deceive you, don't trust them. Obi-Wan tells this to Luke when he is trying to teach Luke to fend off the remote by having his eyes covered. Now, what does that mean, that your eyes can deceive you? Well, I think that we see this in the real world, where something will happen. Some inconvenience or something that seems a certain way. And if we see it with different eyes, then we recognize that it's not really what we perceived it to be. A mirage, for example, is a deceiving of our eyes. In the context of Star Wars, what does that mean? Well, there are several times throughout Star Wars where we get into the idea of perspective and perception, which is the way characters perceive certain things, is wrong. Luke turns off his targeting computer during the Battle of the Yavin and makes that impossible shot. Basically, the lesson there is, as we saw with Red Leader, if you make that shot using, the computer, using that perception, he wasn't going to be able to make the shot. But once Luke changed his perspective, then he was able to make that shot by using the Force to see things more clearly. Now, one of the other things about it is that not only does Star Wars often deal with perspective and perception, but also deals with what you see on the outside isn't always the answer. For example, when Luke goes to Dagobah, he's looking for a great Jedi Master. What does he meet? A little green Muppet. A very silly creature. making a mess of things, getting into a fight with R2D2. Completely ridiculous. And Luke gets annoyed at this creature and tries to basically get rid of it. And sees him only as a pest. That little creature is Yoda. And is who Luke is trying to find. He saw Yoda only with his natural eyes. And his eyes deceived him in that moment. Another example would be Darth Vader. So many people had assumed, including even good characters like Obi-Wan and Yoda, that Anakin Skywalker was gone for good. And that Vader was all there was, and that he would never turn around. What they just saw the outside shell. And certainly they knew what was on the inside too, because Anakin had become corrupted on both inside and outside. But it was Luke who could see the conflict within his father. Another example would be in the Last Jedi. There are several examples of where people were deceived by what they thought they saw and not what was really there. Um, and I can list the examples, but in the case of the reason I wanted to talk about your eyes can deceive you, don't trust them, is that I think that the Acolyte's going to be dealing with that kind of idea. And it's true in real life that sometimes you can't trust your own eyes. And I don't always mean physical eyes, it could mean just our senses, even our mental senses or emotional senses, that we can't always trust it because we think we know what's going on, but we really don't. And it turns out it's something different. Because it requires a different look. Let me give you an example. In The Prince of Egypt, Jethro sings the song Through Heaven's Eyes. And the chorus is, look at your life through heaven's eyes. Yet again, it's the idea of a new pair of eyes, of seeing things differently. In fact, one could argue that all art is an attempt to see things from a different point of view. In the case of Star Wars, I think the idea is don't think you understand it all. Don't think you know it all. Because often your own senses, your own ideas and perceptions of the world may be false. And that includes misjudging people. That includes hope and optimism. The reason I mention that is because when bad things happen in life, it's very easy to where that's all you can see. All you can see is the bad thing. But if you step back and take a larger view, you will see the lesson and even the hidden blessings that come. In the case of Star Wars, the Force is about reaching out with your feelings, reaching out with senses beyond the standard 5 senses that we all have. To let go of your conscious self, to quote Obi-Wan. Now, the reason I think it's going to be a big deal in the Acolyte is, I think in many ways, we might think we know where the story's going. But I imagine that Leslie Headland is going to pull the rug out from under us many times. And we're going to be like, oh, wow, I didn't see that coming. Or we think, as audience members, that we understand some of these characters, but maybe we don't. And most of all, the characters in the story think they understand other characters. But I think their perception is wrong too. So it's a matter of not trusting what you're seeing. In The Rise of Skywalker, Leia says, don't tell me what things look like. Tell me what they are. And I think that's an extremely important lesson in Star Wars is not to be so myopic about our view of the world. Myopic means very narrow-viewed. Not necessarily narrow-minded, but more like seeing the small. Myopic means you're only seeing the small picture. You're seeing the micro and not the macro. Time and time again in Star Wars, this lesson is proved to be vital. For example, when our heroes meet the Ewoks, Han Solo is rather dismissive of them. And the idea that, oh, these guys are going to help us? Which is also the same feeling that a lot of audience members have. Which is, are these the guys that are going to help us? Really? These cute little teddy bears? But Luke rightly understands, I think because of his experience with Yoda. Luke understands that not to judge a book by its cover in this case. And so Star Wars has many, many lessons of don't judge a book by its cover. And also lessons of you sometimes have to let go what you think you know. And not trust in yourself too much. You know, for example, Yoda says you must unlearn what you have learned. I find this to be true in my life. Now, I'm a religious person. And I believe that these lessons are true. I believe that as we look at the world through our own mortal eyes, not through a more spiritual lens, if we only see things in the temporal sense, then we will be deceived or misled quite often. Whereas if we see things through a more spiritual lens, trying to see things through the bigger picture, then we will truly see. So the lesson of Star Wars is don't trust your own perception of the world. or try to embrace a larger view so that you can truly see what you need to see. And I don't know where they're going to take that with the Acolyte, but it is interesting that in the very first teaser they include that line, "One Master Soul, your eyes can deceive you. We must not trust them." I think it's going to be a very important part of the story. And it's a very important part of Star Wars as a whole. For example, pretty much all of The Last Jedi is about not trusting your own perception, and how easily wrong we can be if we trusted our own senses, our own understanding. So those are some thoughts on what Obi-Wan meant when he said that. Because it's a lesson that we all could stand to learn. Anyhow, thank you for listening. My name is Brennan Ware. That noise you hear is my ventilator. And thank you for tuning in to One with the Force, presented by Page Turners. They Were Not My Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you.